Jersey becomes the second state to mandate LGBT and disability-centric inclusive curriculum. Sadly, no New Jersey students are literate enough to actually read the curriculum. I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and this is the Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show, that unique program which keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Today, we're talking about a teachers' union that got caught instructing educators how to push identity politics on students. Plus, a parent is fighting back against a Common Core math publisher who is suing to shut him up. But we start in New Jersey, the Garden State, where the state is now mandating that all curriculum be LGBT and disability inclusive, with absolutely no opt-outs allowed. Yep, that's exactly right. New Jersey has followed in the footsteps of, to the surprise of no one, California, in turning schools into odd places where things that have nothing to do with basic education dominate, right? This story actually is from February of 2019, a number of months ago, but it's back in the news now because some of the graphic images, which we will show you, so if you have little kids, you might want to be careful for this segment, some of the graphic images that are circulating with regards to the story.
And we just want to reiterate what had happened back in February. It was Democrat Governor Phil Murphy. He signed the legislation, and it basically modeled exactly what you had said about California's bill that was passed back in 2011. And what's so interesting about with New Jersey and California, it's going to be implemented upcoming. So it's not like, oh, this story's an old story, and then we're going to put it away. No, it's actually going to be happening in this next school year, and right now is when they're kind of rolling some of this information out. So we want to make sure moms and dads are aware of what is happening. And again, as you said, but we can't reiterate it enough, there is no opt-out allowed for New Jersey.
Leaders of pro-gay groups say the legislation would give children a broader view of U.S. history. The broader view is we now pay attention to who you sleep with in order to make sure you make history. And if there are not enough people who sleep, if there are not enough men who sleep with other men who have made history, we're going to squeeze them in at the expense of other people, right?
Yeah.
And so the leader of a pro-gay group says that legislation would give children a broader view of U.S. history. Quote, young people are learning about LGBT people already in schools, but their identities are hidden, right? And that's part of the problem. Why are they? Why are they already learning about LGBTQ people? Why are we already foregrounding someone's sexuality or sexuality at all for elementary and middle schoolers?
I want to say that's the main point, is it's not that by talking about George Washington, we're talking about how he's a heterosexual. It's for the actions he does, not his sexuality. And that's what we continue to reiterate when we talk about these issues and who's important in history. It's not for their sexuality. Right. It's for what they have done.
And we're going to be telling kids, when George Washington did something, we will never talk about his sexuality at all. When Abe Lincoln, we talk about Lincoln, assuming they ever do it in school anymore, we will never talk about Lincoln's sexuality. But if you have somebody from history who happens to be gay, you lead with gay person, right? And so in other words, the only sexuality that's going to be highlighted for being exceptional is gay or lesbian or transgender, right?
Exactly.
That now, it has to be foregrounded. And that means you're going to have to put people in the curriculum whose historical contributions don't really warrant it. This quote I read you comes from Christian Fuscarino, who is the executive director of Garden State Equality, which has advocated for this bill over several assembly sessions and finally got it. And here's what he says, quote, figures like Bayard Rustin, you ever heard of him?
Mm-mm.
Neither have I. Figures like Bayard Rustin, who was the right-hand man to Martin Luther King for civil rights, was a gay man.
Oh.
So somebody you haven't heard of, somebody who does, to be very honest, right, doesn't require that level of attention from kids. Do they even teach about Martin Luther King? Or is his sexuality, his boring old heterosexuality disqualifying him, right? But so somebody nobody's ever heard of. Somebody like Bayard Rustin is going to be dragged into the classroom now and must share time with King, even if they discuss King at all, right? Because he's gay, not for really any other reason that would warrant this kind of inclusion in a busy history curriculum.
And this is another one of those instances where it's like the 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon.
Of Red Fox.
Of Red Fox.
7 degrees of Red Fox.
Because I'm sure if you get any big group of people together and look through the history, maybe someone one time in the White House back when George Washington was president may have identified as being gay, and now we must bring that person out to the forefront because somehow, somewhere there's a connection. That's not what we should be doing to teach our children.
And if you're going to do it this way, then don't you have to say heterosexual President George Washington.
Absolutely.
Heterosexual 16th President Abraham Lincoln. The heterosexual Dr. Martin Luther King. Don't you have to? Right?
Heterosexual is too many syllables. Gay, just easier. Just heterosexual, too much. Gay,
How
easier.
about straight?
Ooh.
Straight President George Washington.
Now you got me.
Right? How about that? Because what you're doing then is that you're suggesting that history becomes more relevant if you sleep with people of the same gender. That's what you're telling them, right?
Exactly.
You are giving kids a completely false view of everything. And of course, it would be the most absurd thing in the world to say George Washington, who was straight, right? Abe Lincoln, who was straight. You would never do that because you recognize how foolish that is. But now what you're going to do is not only say Rayard Rustin, who is gay, but you're going to say that you're going to drag Bayard into the history curriculum simply because he's gay.
All right. The other component we want to talk about here is the actual sexual education, supposedly, that they're going to be giving. And it's part of the Positive Prevention Plus 2020 plan, and this is what California uses, and New Jersey's using it too. And they have a section called the Special Populations in Schools or Community Settings for the sexual health. And some of the things, well, all of the things that they're giving for all of the students are just disturbing. One thing that pictures are being put out there talking about the different images that they'll see and the types of sexuality that they're going to be presenting.
So if you got your kid, you want to turn them away for the next couple of minutes, because take a look at this picture of representative picture of stick people, I suppose, which you would call them having oral and anal intercourse. This is the kind of thing you're going to be suggesting to them. It's not enough to teach kids about sex. Now you have to teach them about things like anal intercourse, right? Because, Bayard Rustin is now foregrounded as gay. And if you're going to foreground his gayness, then don't you have to foreground how that gay sex works, right? But it's not enough to teach all of those things. You have to teach things like kinky sex. The subheaders include role play, bondage, right? Body fluid or blood play. In case you don't know, that's things like sexuality that involves periods, right? Well, these are the things that they're going to be teaching your middle school children in New Jersey, and you cannot opt out of them.
And in the one screen where they talk about it's condom negotiation skills practice.
How to work condoms.
How to work a condom, but they call it the condom negotiation skills practice. The fact that they put a note in there that says, it's like a little hint to the teachers. If you see students who are doing their negotiation especially well, ask them to model their negotiation skills for the class. Share time, everybody.
Well, and it goes without saying, and we've pointed out before that in the National Sexuality Education Standards that we've talked about many, many times, that it's not just information, it's skills. Mm-hmm. You have to teach kids skills, right? And so it goes without saying here that you are not any longer teaching kids about sex in order for them to protect themselves from diseases. You are empowering kids to engage actively. In fact, you're almost bullying them. You're almost requiring them to put the information you're giving them into real-time scenarios, to demonstrate your skill sets, right? And the better you are at some of these things, the more of an expert you become, the more you can show other kids what you're doing. And this, by default, becomes a way of shaming kids who aren't interested or are too young or who have a moral revulsion to this. You are now bullying those kids that by not participating in this, right, that there's something wrong with them.
Where are the teachers getting all this information? Well, it's their unions who are pushing it upon them if they don't already have that in their heart to teach all about this identity politics. The American Federation of Teachers quarterly journal called The American Educator recently called for incorporating even more leftist ideology into the classroom. The fall issue just came out, and it's called Confronting Bias in Schools, Classroom Conversations on Race, Ethnicity, and Identity.
In other words, and you know this firsthand, you not that long ago went through an education program at our university, right? And how much of your coursework was actually based on teaching kids how to read, to write, and to engage with great literature? Exactly. How much of it was dragging these kinds of sociological issues into the classroom? What would you say, percentage-wise?
Of actually teaching? 12% of actually trying.
12% was what? Actually teaching books?
Actually trying to teach books?
Reads, right. So that means
learning actual that
90
type of stuff.
plus time was spent on what?
And it was spent on reading the articles that were found in journals like these, and let's talk about it. Everyone had to read an article like this opening essay they had called "A Defining Moment for Democracy," and it was written by the union president. And it would be them talking about their opinion and how bad everyone else is and how we need justice in the classroom for all of our students and diversity and representation and all that. And we'd have to get in our Barney circles and talk about that.
So it's not just the unions. The unions are pushing this on their people, right?
Yep.
And then the education professors who teach all the upcoming teachers are pushing this on the kids. So what you're not really getting is anything that's going to help you become a better teacher of writing, a better teacher of reading. No. What you're getting over and over again is a mandate, an order from your union, a mandate from the professors that have to pass you, that if you want to be a teacher, you're going to make the primary purpose of your classrooms social justice ideology. Right, and not education.
Absolutely. And so in this opening essay that it was the union president for American Federation of Teachers is Randi Weingarten. She wrote just how bad President Donald Trump really is. She says the president is, quote, leading a homegrown hate movement, and that Trump has famed biases that aim to dehumanize the other and that erode our democracy. And we can't ignore Trump's bigotry and cruelty or the fact that his erratic behavior is intended to create chaos and confusion. That's the opening essay.
So in other words, it is the political dislike of a president who is not a radical progressive, right? And so how are you going to punish American school kids? You're going to punish American school kids for Donald Trump by robbing them of an actual education and forcing them to engage your warped view of American politics. That's what you're doing now. And the unions are underwriting that, and the college professors are underwriting that who teach your kids how to teach. It is no wonder that we're turning out a young generation of teachers, fewer and fewer, by the way, are going into teaching because they see what a scam this is. But we're turning out younger and younger generations of teachers who don't know how to read books, who don't know how to teach literacy. What they're really, really good at is having these wonderfully politically leftist conversations with their children and influencing how little kids think about politics.
Well, and because this was the fall issue, I mean, they had to give out the fall issue to the teachers and to the students at the colleges. It had to be a doozy. So also included in this entire issue, it's a 44-page issue. There are 13 references to tolerance, 15 references to equity, 32 to racial identity, 79 to identity, and of course 102 references to bias. One of the other articles that was also included, this is all about the history, is called Teaching the Complex History of Abolition and the Civil War by Adam Sanchez. Now, Adam Sanchez is a Philadelphia high school teacher, okay, but he's also the editor at Rethinking Schools magazine, which co-manages the Zinn education product. Zinn, I've heard that name. Yes, Howard Zinn, the Marxist historian who wrote the book, A People's History of the United States, which, of course, I had to read in one of my education literacy courses.
Of course you did.
So, yeah, that is also included in this issue so that teachers can read and get all hyped up about it.
And this will surprise you to learn that the Southern Poverty Law Center is contributing this to this as well, right? The articles follow what Weingarten's Trump-focused essay are all oriented around race relations in the education system. Some lay out direct orders for teachers on how to improve race relations, among the youth, right? By the way, do our little children actually have racial problems? No, they don't. They do not. But you are assessing and interrupting. We're not teaching anymore. We are interrupting what we consider to be intolerance at school. Written by the staff of the Southern Poverty Law Center,
yes.
Right? A radical Marxist organization whose sole purpose is to brand any conservative groups as hate crime groups.
Oh, not even conservative groups. They label any group that doesn't toe
even
their
moderately
line.
Democratic.
It doesn't even matter. Yeah, you're just a hate group. It doesn't matter. So that's what's happening in the fall issue of the American Educator. So pick up your copy and then promptly burn it. Burn the magazine. But we're going to go to a little bit more positive a story. A little bit. At least, hopefully, it'll end positively. Where we have a father who is named Blaine Dillard. He's from Cary, North Carolina. And he has 3 kids who attend school in the Wake County School District. Well, Mr. Dillard decided to speak out against the math company that his school district uses for their Common Core math curriculum. The company is called Mathematics Vision Project, MVP. I see what they did there. And so all the dad did was speak out. And they are now, MVP is suing Mr. Dillard, accusing him of libel and slander and tortious interference with business relations because he criticized the program that is being used in the kids' classroom.
And this is where we've come, right? The same schools that will tell you Common Core no longer exists are the same ones who are using Common Core just renamed.
Exactly.
Are now participating, the companies are participating in this Common Core rebrand, are now suing anybody who dares to call them out. It's really remarkable.
But here's where the good part, I guess, is coming in. He's doing a countersuit to them, and I'm really hoping something good comes of it. The local news station in Cary, North Carolina, actually discussed a 7-page lawsuit that Dillard is doing, and that there are actually several different parents who are standing behind Dillard. So check it out.
What have we come to when a curriculum developer is out there suing parents for voicing concerns?
You worry for your kids that you're not going to be able to stand up and, for what's right and for a sound math education.
If kids are coming home day after day saying they're not learning in a math class, that's the primary concern.
The fact that we have parents who are finally, at least locally, standing up and saying, hey, as parents, do we not have the right to look at our kids' curriculum and question it and make sure that our children are actually, when they attend school, are learning? The fact that now these companies are having to sue to shut you up says everything about what their curriculum is.
I guess on one hand, yeah, I think there is something good about that and the fact that a handful of other parents are standing with this fella. But the problem is that it took him getting sued for anybody to stand up and do it, right? It took the rather than ignoring parents, now you've got companies who are attacking them, legally attacking them, for telling the truth about their kids' failed education. And while it's a good thing this dad has decided to countersue, and it's a lovely thing that there's a handful of moms and dads who, whatever that means, by the way, support him. What does that mean? Stand in the wings? Do we have their names? I mean, are they countersuing as well? What are they doing other than standing by him? The fact is, it's one school, right? And so it seems to me that the threat of being sued by companies for daring to challenge them perhaps will have a darker consequence on further people speaking out, then more parents are going to say, I'm going to stand up in spite of getting sued, right? It's just one more way for the educrats of America, including the textbook companies, to just send a message to you. Your kids are our kids. They'll learn what we teach them. We are not going to listen to your concerns. And if you persist in challenging us, we will take you to court with all of the deep pocket resources we have. And good for him for fighting back. But this is a dark day. Now, again, like you said, maybe it'll end well. If a federal judge or a judge comes back and smacks down these companies and sends a definitive message, then that's one thing we can hope for.
And I will be the optimist
and
hope for that and say that if MVP is having to sue them, it means you are that much closer to the truth, that they are scared. So don't let them intimidate you. It's just money.
And you're right about that. Don't let them intimidate you.
Don't let them intimidate you. Stand up to them. And that will wrap things up on this great day. As always, please share the episode and subscribe to the free audio podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, and everywhere else. Visit drdukeshow.com, then click on any of the platforms on the top of the screen and subscribe. And don't forget to type out the one and only 5-star review on iTunes.
And we'll be back tomorrow at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke. She's Katie. Until next time, stay educated, my friends.